Good morning and welcome to Google Digital Garage. My name is Anthea and I'm one of the Google Digital Garage trainers who is going to take you through building engaging presentations. Before we jump in, I just want to go through a few housekeeping rules and also introduce our moderator for the day, who is Roshane. Now, Roshane is going to be speaking with you throughout today's session. So if you have any questions or any comments, please do feel free to drop them in the chat, which I'll come to in a moment. If you are having any difficulties hearing or seeing me at any point, please do refresh your page. If you'd like to join in that chat to drop in your comments and your questions, you will need to have a YouTube account. If you are currently in YouTube and you don't have an account, there will be a button for you to press to set up your account, and you'll be back here in a matter of moments. If you already have a YouTube account, please do log in and then you'll be able to access the chat. We'll be pausing for questions at the end, but of course you are more than welcome to drop your questions as we go, and Roshane will answer as many of those as possible, and those that may be beneficial for everybody to hear, I will address live on screen now. We're running this particular session as part of a broader offering of training sessions. So please do have a look at our website for any other webinars that you might be interested in. It could be to do with social media or digital marketing strategy, building a brand, or even if you're trying to get into career development and want to build a CV and cover letter, we have a variety of webinars available. So do check out the website and have a look to see which other webinars might be useful for you. We're just about to dive in, so please do let us know where you are tuning in from. Where in the world? Let us know your name and let us know where you're coming from. And also, what is one thing that you struggle with when it comes to presentations? Today, we are going to help you craft an engaging presentation. You're going to make the most of Google Slides in order to build your presentation. So we'll be giving you some practical tips and tools for how to use Google Slides. And then we'll finish off with how to master the delivery of your presentation in order to capture and keep your audience's attention. So we'll start off with crafting a presentation to engage your audience. Now, the first thing we need to do is understand why we are presenting. I know that there's probably many of you I know with a training background of 20 years. I have spent time not only crafting presentations, but also watching presentations. And sometimes I do wonder, what was the point of that? It needs to be very clear why we are presenting so that people who leave our presence, who leave our presentation, are very clear about what value that presentation has added to their life. So we like to use presentations to inform. This is an informational presentation. We are going to give you some information that will help you to do something, and you can take that information and do what you want with it. It could be that we are using it for persuasion. So again, it could be that there is a pitch that you are doing. Maybe you're looking for funding. Maybe you're trying to collaborate with a particular company and you want to persuade them or influence them to come to a particular outcome that benefits you. It could be used for teaching. And again, this is also a teaching presentation, as there are very specific things that we get you to do. It could be how-tos. It could be a presentation that teaches your employees about how to use a new system. Whatever it is, you need to be clear about why you are presenting, as that is going to shape the entire presentation itself. So what makes a good presentation? Do let us know any presentations that have really stood out for you. Now, notice that I didn't say that were really great, because sometimes it's not the great presentations that we remember, it's the really bad ones. So if you've had any experiences of presentations that really stood out for you, do also let us know in the chat. So let's have a look. Now, for you to create a presentation that is appropriate, you have to really know why your audience is attending. Who are you speaking to? Why are they there? Why are they attending that particular presentation? And what is it that they expect to learn, hear, or understand? And so there are a few questions that you can answer about your audience in order to build your presentation with the right people in mind. So what is the demographic? So research them. What professions are they in? Where are they located? Does that matter? And this will help you to pitch your presentation at the right level, or include or exclude relevant, relatable examples and information. So if you're delivering a presentation about the statistics of students who drop out of education, you're likely to be delivering that to educators. So in the examples that you use, you want to provide examples that relate to students or educators rather than people who end up in prison or people who suffer with mental health issues. Those examples aren't specific to the presentation. So the more you can learn about your audience, the more you will understand how to tailor the content of your presentation for them. The next thing is what's motivated them to attend. Is it mandatory? If it's mandatory, and I've been to so many training courses where when I do the initial questions in the beginning, why are you here? They'll be like, my manager made me come. A bit heartbreaking to hear as a trainer or a facilitator, because you want everyone to come feeling motivated to be there. But sometimes it is by force. And that's useful to know because it means that you're going to have to create more of a buy-in for that particular part of the audience so that they find their own reason for being there. What's their level of understanding? Is this a topic that you shared before? Is it you building on something, or is it they are completely new to it? Or maybe they're experts in it and there's something, or maybe there's somewhere in between. Knowing that will help you to determine what information to include and what information to strip out. And also think about the time and the headspace of it. So if you're presenting to someone who's more senior, or you're providing a pitch to a room with people who've got very limited attention, consider how long you want to make that presentation. For people who are maybe going to use what you've given as part of their day-to-day, you may want to spend a bit more time. If it's a bit more high level and you're giving that overarching view and you just want to lead people to a particular decision, that can be shorter, with an emphasis on really getting those key points across as soon as possible. And then how do you provide time to engage with your audience so that they're able to ask questions? Is it online? Is it offline? And is there someone else who can facilitate that? So there's a number of different things that you would need to understand about your audience to shape your presentation. Understand what their pain points are. Why might they be coming? What problems are they having that your presentation will address or solve? The more you can understand that, the more you can align the language that you use to be language that they would use to describe their problem rather than how you would describe it. And that then creates a connection with your audience about what you are delivering. And then lastly, consider the accessibility side of it. We might find a beautiful presentation template that's really aesthetically pleasing, but then you have to think about the fonts that you're using, the colors, and how these might affect people with different diversities like dyslexia, color vision, deficiency, etc. So I'm going to give you a few pointers on these on the next slide. So first off, you want to be as clear and concise as possible. Remember that attention spans are very limited. I believe it's around 8 seconds. So you want to get to the point in the shortest time possible. We're not saying create an 8-second presentation. What we're saying is for each time that you are giving a new piece of information, get to the point within the first 8 seconds so that that captures their attention and they're more engaged. So try and avoid jargon. Remember that you may have varying levels of understanding and expertise in your audience. So when you use too much jargon, it immediately excludes people who are not familiar with it. If you need to use jargon for the purposes of your presentation, ensure that you explain it. So if you use an acronym or an industry-related term, don't assume everyone knows what it is. Explain it and say, from now on, I'm going to refer to this as whatever the acronym is. And then that includes them and they get to ask any questions maybe about what that means. So you can elaborate and make them feel comfortable. And then lastly, make sure that you reduce the amount of text on a slide. Sometimes we can get into a habit of bullet pointing things and writing an entire paragraph for every bullet. The content that you put on a slide is supposed to be a reference. So what's the key thing that you need to glance at on your slide that tells your audience the key message, but also triggers that for you to explain and elaborate on? You don't put all of your content on the slide. You can put that in speaker notes or have some separate notes with you. So there are several ways to tell stories in a presentation. And honestly, storytelling is very fast becoming the best way to deliver any form of communication, whether it's a conversation between one or two people, a discussion within a group, or a formal presentation. Storytelling helps you to connect with your audience and helps them to relate. So when you're telling your story, you should aim to evoke empathy, build anticipation, or spark the imagination. So if we explore a few versions of presentation story structures, this will help you to understand the different attributes that are invoking empathy or building anticipation. So as I go through these, please jot down any questions you've got or any comments, or even let us know if you have tried this yourself. So the first one is the hero's journey. This is a classic storytelling structure which was popularized by Joseph Campbell. And it follows a protagonist journey, so like the key character's journey through a series of challenges and transformations. And if you incorporate this structure into your presentation, you create anticipation and engagement as the story unfolds and the audience is able to hear the progress that the hero takes. It builds empathy because the audience is able to connect with their struggles and their eventual triumph. The next one is the problem solution narrative. So in this structure, you begin by presenting a relatable problem or a challenge that your audience may face. How can you get your staff to complete appraisals on time? Right, that's a problem that people within that room, maybe they're in HR, have at that particular time. And then you introduce the solution or idea that addresses that effectively. And by highlighting those pain points, it helps you to relate. And then offering a solution, it helps them to find hope. You create empathy with their experience and build anticipation for the solution that you're going to present, which then adds value to their life. The next one is personal anecdotes. Now, this is great because you know your own story, you know your own life. And so it's really easy for you to look back at your life and really cherry pick some of the things that are going to be important for other people to hear. So sharing personal stories and anecdotes can be a powerful way to connect with your audience emotionally. When you recount your own experiences, again, you're building empathy because the audience can relate to your journey. If you spoke about being bullied at school, or you talked about the struggle of being out of work for a period of time, or if you talked about how you managed to navigate your way through the pandemic, these are all things that somebody in your audience is likely to be able to relate to. And this approach is particularly effective when the story aligns with the topic of your presentation. So allow the audience to see the relevance and the authenticity of your message and align it to that presentation. The next one is the emotional arc. Now, this refers to the deliberate progression of emotions throughout your presentation. So you start off immediately capturing your audience's attention and curiosity. And this could be a really standout or controversial statement that really gets them, to the heart, hits their heart quite deeply. And then over time, you gradually build that anticipation by introducing some tension or some conflict. And as you continue to navigate your way through the story, you're creating that empathy because you're highlighting the emotional impact that individuals or communities have had. And then you conclude with a resolution that brings a sense of satisfaction or maybe even inspiration, which leaves the audience with a long lasting impression. And that's the thing that's most likely going to be what they take away and remember days and weeks after. And it might even inspire them to do something different in their own life. And then lastly, you have the surprise twist. This is adding an unexpected twist to your presentation because it generates excitement and anticipation amongst the audience. Imagine you've created this narrative that is leading your audience on a particular journey, and they are expecting and anticipating a very specific outcome. But then you come out with by introducing a surprising fact or changing the outcome, you create a sense of curiosity and engagement. That helps to keep the audience on their toes and sit up in their seats, and it also makes your presentation more memorable. So remember that effective storytelling in presentations is not just about the structure, but also about the delivery. And we will talk about this today as well. So using vocal variety, the gestures, the visuals that you have enhances the impact. Imagine having a presentation with an image of a crying child, and your presentation is talking, your story is talking about a time where all you could do was cry because you are unable to articulate yourself in words. Having that image there as you tell that story really connects the two and creates much more of an impact on your audience. So really do think about that and how you can utilize other things to enhance the impact of your presentation. So let's have a look at these stories in terms of, these story structures in terms of some stories that we've got. And as I go through these, again, let us know, have you tried any of these? Do you relate to any of these? And what's been your experience? So let's meet Shani. Now, this is where we look at the hero's journey and we follow a small business owner. Now, once upon a time, there was a small business owner named Shani. She faced numerous challenges in her entrepreneurial journey, from financial struggles to fierce competition. However, she was determined to succeed. She embarked on a journey to learn, adapt, and overcome obstacles. Through hard work, perseverance, and a strong support network, Shani transformed her business into a thriving enterprise. Her journey inspired others and she became a mentor for aspiring entrepreneurs, sharing her knowledge and empowering them to embark on their own heroic journeys. So what do you notice about this story and how did you feel as I was reading through it? Now, bearing in mind, and as again I mentioned, we will be coming back to this later, but it's important how you deliver it, because the anticipation you create with your voice, with your gestures, with your facial expressions can really change the narrative of the words that you're speaking. Let's have a look at another one. We have problem solution, and Rajarshi, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, has also mentioned that he's used the problem solution method. So let us know, how did that work for you? Now we're going to meet Alex, a passionate small business owner facing declining sales. Frustrated, he researched effective marketing strategies and discovered the power of social media. Recognizing the problem, he implemented a target social media campaign, engaging customers and boosting brand awareness. As a result, his business experienced a significant upswing in sales and customer engagement. So by identifying the problem and implementing an innovative solution, Alex's small business regained its momentum and achieved sustainable growth. So let us know who can identify the problem and the solution in this story. What you always want to be able to do is pick out what it is that the speaker is trying to tell you from that story. There is always going to be a lesson. Whether it's what's the problem, what's the solution, how I overcame something. Usually we always tell stories to get to a point where we can inspire others. So let us know what's the problem and what's the solution. Next, we have relate to the speaker. So in the early days of my small business, I found myself struggling to balance work and family life. Long hours and mounting stress were taking a toll on my well-being. One day, I had an epiphany during a family holiday. As I watched my children play and I laughed with my spouse, I realized the importance of finding harmony between work and personal life. With renewed determination, I implemented a flexible schedule, prioritized my self-care, and I delegated tasks. This shift not only improved my relationships, but also enhanced my business, productivity, and success. So, what was the type of story that this particular one is? The way that you can relate to the speaker is by telling your own story. Like I said, you know your own story. You know what aspects of it are likely to resonate with your audience, and also tell them how you've overcome something yourself. And personal storytelling is a really useful structure if you are a small business and you're selling services that work, especially around professional or personal development. So if you're a coach, a mentor, you work with people on a one-to-one basis, or your business is overcoming a very specific problem, by sharing your story about how you were able to overcome it in your own life, that increases your credibility to be able to help others with it too. So again, this is the personal anecdotes, which are really useful. So another thing is also in regards to doing good research, it can make or break your presentation. So good research provides credibility to your content and also helps you to tell a very convincing story, ensuring that you get the audience's trust and also their buy-in. So make sure you're always using credible sources for information, especially for data and stats. You don't want someone to go away from your presentation, look up something you said and find out that there is no basis for it. So here's a few things that you can look for to determine if a source is credible. Firstly is around the authority. Is the author an expert on this topic? Do they have any credentials or experience that would make them an authority on that subject? What about the accuracy of it? Is the information accurate? Can you find other sources that corroborate the information, or is this one piece of truth where everything else is saying that it's a lie? Is this source biased? Does it have a particular gender or a point of view, or is it leading people into a particular point of view? How objective is it? Is the source objective? Does it present all sides of the argument or the issue fairly? Or is it, again, leading into a very subjective area? And then lastly, is the information up to date? Like, how valuable is this? We call it currency, but how valuable is it if you're referring to stats that were over 10 years ago? And we know that the landscape of the world has changed significantly, even in the last 3 years. So you want to make sure that you're using sources that have been updated recently. So it's always important to be critical of the information that you find and to cross-check it with other sources. You can also look at journalistic publications. Again, there are other websites like Statista, that's reliable and credible. Try to avoid using blogs and Wikipedia, as those are essentially content that can be written by anyone. So if you are looking at a blog, do check their sources. So in their footnotes, they should be including their sources. Go through those sources and check out that information for yourself before you decide to quote anything. And where possible, try to find information that is localized or relevant to your audience. Bringing information to life with visuals can also make or break your presentation. I've been to many, many presentations where it's just text only and my eyes just begin to blur after a certain point. And when especially you're dealing with things like data, it's really important to make that visual because some people find it struggle to understand numbers. But if you create a picture from it, it makes things make more sense. So try to use no more than 3 primary colors, as using too many can be very overstimulating and it can detract from the content that you're trying to share. Try and be consistent with a look and feel. So this comes back down to branding. What is your color scheme? What is your brand? And what colors will you consistently use throughout your presentation? If you're going to use infographics, keep them clear and also concise. Try not to use too many unnecessary elements. And as you see on screen, the difference on the right and left, I'm much more engaged looking at the left. Immediately, I can see 67% is the key figure, and that relates to the stores that are outside of the UK. And because of the 2 colors, I can see out of 100 visually what that looks like. And then when you're talking about the stores, visually, if you give me a map, now I have a better understanding about where those particular stores are. So think about the fonts, and it can be really tempting to use a variety of fonts because they look really nice and you want things to stand out. But honestly, too much is too much, and it will detract from what you're trying to say because people are just overwhelmed with different fonts, font sizes, font colors, and yeah, it's too much. So remember that the fonts can greatly impact the overall visual appeal and readability of your slides. If you have information on a slide, it's because you want people to read it. So let them read it clearly without distracting them with too much like you have on the right-hand side. So prioritize readability. Make sure the font is clear and easy to read from a distance. Sans serif fonts like Arial, Calibri, Helvetica, they tend to be popular choices for presentations because they're clean and legible. These fonts are widely available and can be easily read on screens or projection systems. Try not to overcomplicate things, as we mentioned, especially if you're using things like charts. Graphics are great for lifting up your presentation, but try not to do too much and try to, again, not to use more than 3 colors and make sure when you're using those colors, they seem relevant for what you're doing. And then also think about the hierarchy. If you have everything on the same level, you're not drawing anything out particularly to anybody. So therefore, you want to put things on different levels, which showcase the importance of each of those things in comparison to each other. So when it comes to fonts and text, especially, it's also a good idea to generally follow the rule that headings are the largest, then subheadings, and then the body of text. And when it comes to colors, use your brightest colors to draw attention to the most important elements. And again, like you see here, put things on different levels to show its importance. And then again, as we've said, using visuals to simplify those ideas. You can use things like bar charts, maps, diagrams. You can even use photos. Again, if you're delivering a very emotive presentation, photographs are really good to help to capture and emphasize the emotion that you're trying to convey. And then you also want to be thinking of the accessibility side. So you want to make sure it's accessible to everybody. Think about people who have color vision deficiency. When you have too many colors going on and it's not clear to distinguish between the two, it can cause somebody to not understand what it is you're trying to say or be able to pull out the most important aspect of that. So if you look at the first example on the screen, it's clear which title is easier to read. Using strong color contrast and bold fonts is a really great way to ensure that your text is legible. Black and white can help provide maximum contrast, but that's not always interesting to look at. So do be careful with the colors that you're using and have a play around with them to see which is useful or most effective. In the second example, you're trying to illustrate that a message has been sent and delivered and read. Now, you can't really tell from the second example what has been sent, delivered, or read, because if you have color vision deficiency, all of those look exactly the same. So trying to distinguish between them helps somebody else. And then, of course, when it comes to font size, remember to use as big as fonts as possible. Usually a minimum of 28 if you're delivering certain presentations, but no fonts smaller than 14 when you're putting up other text. So let's have a look at building your presentations. So we're going to go through a few tips on how to use Google Slides to put your presentation together. Now, there are some benefits of using Google Slides, and the first is that you have live collaboration. Once it's saved onto your G Drive, everybody that you've given access to in your workspace can make changes to that, to review it, to add comments and all of those things. It could be that you create the structure of your presentation and then you assign different slides for people to create, and then each of you can be working on the same document at the same time using Google Workspace. It also allows you to have multiple presenters and, of course, back up your work because you're on Google Workspace, which then means you can access it anywhere. You can even use it on your phone if you've got the app, or you can use it on a different browser and pick up from where you've left off. The next is picking a theme. So if you don't already have your own brand, you can use one of the many templates that are there, and then you can make changes to those colors and fonts if you want to. Remember, all of these themes are customizable and you can change most of the elements on the page. And again, I would advise you, if you are delivering presentations, that you try to come up with a brand or a theme so that every time you deliver presentations, you're using the same kind of branding for that. That's also something that helps people to remember you or make your presentations memorable, because they remember the theme or the color scheme or the fonts or whatever it is that you were using at the time. Enhance your presentation. Your presentation is a canvas for creativity and engagement. So there's a number of different features that you can use to make it more exciting. So firstly, you can add a variety of extensions like icons. You can use flat icon, fonts from Extensis fonts. You can get charts pulled in from Google Sheets. You can get stuff translated from Translate My Slide. You can use music and polls. So again, there's a lot of creative freedom that you can use by using Google Slides. You can run polls and activities. So you can add polls to your slides and help keep your audience focused and engaged by allowing them to participate in the session. So you can connect Google Slides with things like Slido or Mentimeter, integrate it into your slides and run live quizzes, polls, Q&As, and much more. And if you want to, you can even make it competitive by having a leaderboard. You can also, you can access all the extensions from the extension button in your toolbar. So where it says extensions, you've got add-ons, and then you also have a list of other things that you can use. And again, if you are looking for some inspiration, do use the Explore feature under Tools to search the web and images and pull some content directly from your drives. So there's just 3 features, but there are plenty more. And the more you explore, the more you will get out of it. So how do you make your title more impactful? Create presentations that wow versus make good presentations. Which of these do you think sounds better? When you're thinking about the title of your presentation, and to be fair, when I create presentations, I usually leave the name till last, because that once I've built it, I know the content of it. Once I've built it, I then come back and say, how can I relate the real key message of this presentation with the title? So it needs to be something that's going to grab the audience attention and set the tone for the entire presentation. So use strong and active language. Choose words that evoke curiosity, intrigue, or emotions in your audience. Strong and provocative language can immediately capture their attention and generate interest. So an example of that, you could have a generic title like Master, Effective Time Management. Yeah, sounds okay. It's effective because that's what you're going to teach. But you could also have a more impactful title like Mastering the Clock. unleash the power of time management. That sounds more like something I would want to do. The next thing is to make it concise and memorable. Again, you don't want a really long 10, 15 word title. You want something short, succinct, and snappy. You can consider using catchy phrases, alliteration, or wordplay to make it more memorable. For example, if you had a presentation that was about problem solving, you could have a title like Thinking Outside the Box, the Art of Innovation. That sounds more intriguing and makes me want to know more about what's coming up. And then you can also use your title to highlight the benefit or the outcome. So in the title, it shows them what they will gain from it. So again, create presentations that wow, that is me telling you the benefit of this presentation that we're doing today. So you can create presentations that wow. So always think about that title. That's the thing that's going to grab people's attention and make them want to come and listen to what you have to say. So remember that too much text can be overwhelming and it can distract from what you're saying. So keep it simple, highlight a few key things that you want your audience to know, and use that as a trigger for you to elaborate in more detail. A few more presentation tips is consider the number of slides that you're going to use. You don't want to have as many slides as you do have minutes, or you'll find that you'll have to rush through it. So keep the number of slides succinct and talk through them, and have a mixture of text slides, visual slides, etc., to break up the monotony of your presentation. Keep your bullet points concise because you want them to focus on what you're saying rather than reading lots of text. Think about the size of your text. Can it be read at the back of the room? And again, this is knowing your audience and knowing the location for your delivery. Is this going to be shared on a screen, in which case you want the text to be big enough so that people can see it? And if you're going to have a really large room, you may end up having more slides so that you can have bigger fonts and text on each slide so that people can see. Also keep it interesting by varying the pace of your slides. There could be some parts that you move quickly through and then some parts that you slow down, which indicate this is a subject or a topic or an area that you want to explore in more detail. Also consider using screen sharing. So this is what we're doing at the moment. We're streaming live, but I'm sharing a screen so you can see this presentation. Consider using video. So will you be able to see them? So again, depends on the size of your audience. If you're in a large forum per se, you've got a stage at the front and you've got hundreds of people, not everyone's going to be able to see you on stage. You might want to have a video screen, which also shows you so people can see you clearly. Include the live audience participation. So are you going to interact with them? Will this be chat if it's online? Will it be a way that they can have a microphone going around the audience? How are you going to interact with them? And do you need any help? Will you need to have a moderator there who can help you? Consider the ease of use. Whatever you're going to do, how easy is it going to be to set up? How easy is it going to be for people to join? And how much is it going to cost? You have to check out what resources you have and then budget and choose applications or tools or resources accordingly. And then lastly, there are a few different presentation tools that you can also use, such as Prezi, Canva, and also Visme. There are lots of other options and they're out there for varying costs, but we recommend that you do a bit of research and look into the ones that work best for you and the presentation you are trying to give. So let's move on to our final section where we look at delivering engaging presentations. The first part is, how do you adapt to your audience? Now remember, the size of the audience does matter. If I'm doing a 1, 2, 3 presentation, I don't need to have a room with a stage and 100 seats, right? So you have to think about how many people you're going to present to and the space that you are going to present to them in. And remember that even if you do have a crowd of 50, 100, 1,000 people, it's made up of individuals. And so the idea is that what makes sense for one individual will make sense for many. And just being able to speak to one person regardless of size, will help you to connect with the audience. Do you want to have audience participation? Now, I think this depends on the length of your presentation. If you have a 20-minute presentation to give, it's highly likely that the audience participation is going to be very minimal. You may have a question up the front, maybe opportunity for Q&A at the end. But if you've got an hour, you're likely to want to have more interaction. So as we've been doing throughout here, I'm asking you questions. What do you think about that? What experience have you got in that? And it gives you an opportunity to interact with me, even though I'm delivering this virtually. So regardless of the size of your audience, there are a number of different ways that you can interact. Now, it could be for large groups, you do a show of hands. That's one of my favorites. Whenever I deliver a speech, I tend to open up with a question because it forces people to be physical and it gets them to be part of my presentation. So I'm immediately creating a question. How many people in this room watch Game of Thrones? Stand up if you like chewing gum, right? It doesn't matter how outlandish it is, getting them to interact is really useful. If you have a medium-sized group, you can ask them directly to individuals. So where I have a group of maybe 20 people, I may ask one or two people from the front, or I might ask a question to someone sitting in the back. And because we've got a small group, I can make eye contact with someone, show with my hands that I'm talking to them and inviting them into the conversation. You can also split the group up into pairs or into half, and it allows you to get them to present back what they've learned. If you're doing one-to-one groups, this is more likely to be a conversation. So ask them to carry out tasks that you've been discussing, and then say, can you show me how to do this? All right, and then that gets them to be involved. And then again, when you're online, the best way to interact where possible is to use the chat function. So today we have the chat function. Not all of you are using it, but we have it. So are there questions that you want to ask? Is there something on your mind that you want to share? Have you had any experience of anything? Pop it into the chat. We're here live today to answer your questions. So it's definitely worthwhile using this as an opportunity to get your questions answered. And the moderator is there to be checking on that and to comment on certain things, maybe to pass information to the key trainer or facilitator so that all of those questions can get asked. And again, asking questions, it's really bad when you ask questions and no one responds. Now, the time that generally tends to happen is when you've waited until the end to ask a question. This is why we advise you going straight in the beginning to get that audience engagement so they stay with you the whole time. And really focus on the listening aspect of it. So when you're engaging with your audience, are you listening to what they're saying? Or are you just giving them a 1-minute window to say what they need to say and then move on? So it's really important that you learn how to handle questions and to listen to the question. The best way to do that is once someone asks a question, you play it back to them based on what you've understood. And if they hear you say something that was not what their intention was, then you get to have that conversation and make it clear so that when you answer the question, you're answering the question that they really wanted to ask. So here's a few more tips. When people are asking questions, again, active listening. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth. So let's listen more than we speak. And then also acknowledging what people have said. So avoid content overload. You can quite easily get into death by PowerPoint, so to speak, by having 100 slides. Just cut it down. Think about the story. The story for me is the underpinning thing of the whole presentation. If you start with a story, it gives you an idea about where you want to go. And then you fill all of the other gaps around that story. So I know I want to tell you a story about how I overcame this challenge in my business. So therefore, the additions that I create in my content are to do with where I was at the beginning, what lessons I learned as I was going through these challenges, and then what that result was when I overcame it. You can really condense content by tailoring that story. and making sure it's relevant to the audience. Aim to have a maximum of 3 key things to say for each slide. And where you need to, just take a breath for each slide to recall and also get you focused for the next part. Pausing is great. If you run out of things to say or you can't remember what you need to say, you say the last thing that you said, pause. And then you go into the next part. Remember that your voice is a powerful tool. So think about how you can adapt it depending on the situation that you are in. The volume is important. Now, I'm doing this virtually. I need to be clear enough so that my microphone picks my voice up, but ultimately you get to control my volume. You can turn me all the way up and you can turn me all the way down, but I need to make sure that I'm speaking at a volume that people can hear. When you're in a room, and I've been in a room delivering a speech to 5 people, I've been in a room delivering a speech to 200 people. Now, even though I have a microphone, I have to use the volume of my voice in a very different way. And that could be because I want people to focus on what I'm saying. So when I want to really draw people in, I lower my volume. And then I get to this point where I really want to reveal the thing that's really important. I increase the volume of my voice so people are engaged and helps me make a point. Adapt your style. So adapt it to your audience and the subject. So again, if you're going into an audience where you're speaking to students aged 12 to 13 versus going to an international business conference where everyone is over 50, you're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to think about the language that you use that relates to those particular audiences, what you dress like, and how you interact with them. So again, it changes based on the size of your audience, the experience level of your group, or the demographics even of your audience. Thirdly, you want to look at your tone. So vary this to make the presentation interesting. So notice that as I've been going through this, my voice has, my tone has, I like to call it the roller coaster. Sometimes I go up and then sometimes I come down. Sometimes I speak in the middle. And then when there's an interesting point, I change my tone so that you're able to know that this is something that I really want you to be aware of. I also use a lot of facial expressions and hand gestures, as you probably have seen. And these are the things that help to make my voice have more meaning. So if you're using an inverted tone at the end of a sentence, that indicates it's a question. What do you think about this? Have you had any experience in that? But if you're doing it all the time, it can lead to a very confusing status. If I'm always saying anything with an inverted tone at the end, you're going to always be wondering, is she asking me a question? So be very deliberate when you're using your tone. And then lastly, you want to look at the pace. So maintain a steady speed and remember to pause. Pause and breathe. Especially if you've got different sections, it's nice to be able to take a breath at the end of each section, which shifts your gear, your focus for your audience as well. Be calm, well-paced, and relaxed. And that will also help to create the same feelings in your audience and also make you seem more confident and credible, even if inside you are feeling the worst fear ever. Remember, what is your body language communicating? So your body language plays a very crucial role in your communication. So if I sat here and I was hunched over and I was kind of looking away and I was just had my arms crossed the whole time and, just here, immediately you probably won't be thinking that I had much to say or anything of interest. But as soon as I open myself up, I roll my shoulders back, my neck is elongated and I'm using gestures, there's a level of confidence in this. And so you don't realize, but your facial expressions, your gestures, even your stance, how you stand, root your feet, plant your feet shoulder width apart, roll your shoulders back, and really just keep your arms open, because what that does is it invites the audience in. I want you to come into my world and be a part of this presentation. So the more you're able to understand your own body language, and one thing I do when I deliver public speeches, I practice my speeches in the mirror, because I don't know what I look like, right? We don't. So until you practice in the mirror, delivering your speech and using the gestures and the facial expressions and your stance, you're not going to know if it's going to communicate the right thing to the right people. So make sure that you have a strong body language, because that also is good for building credibility. And then lastly, thinking about how your body expresses emotions. If you're talking about something sad, you don't want to be here with a smile on your face and like, this was a very sad time of my life. You really want to slow down the pace. You want to sink into yourself a bit more. You want to look at people more and try to connect with them and really soften what you're saying, slow things down and really capture that emotion. And then when you're moving forward, you change all of those things so that people are aware that you're now experiencing a different emotion. So a few examples here. We've got, if you were frustrated, what does that look like? I'm frustrated right now. I'm angry right now. And practicing those different emotions, and they may really feel silly when you're doing them, but trust me, they're helpful, because when you go and you stand in front of somebody live, knowing that you've practiced exactly what postures and gestures that you want to showcase, it gives you a different type of confidence. So try these different poses. What does it look like when I'm angry about something? There's the injustice in my speech, and I really want to convey that. I'm going to be doing things that are stiff, that it shows that I'm angry. I've got anger written all over my face. But then if I'm really excited, I want to really have a smile on my face, and I want to be like this woman in the middle. Right? And then the power pose is you just having that moment where you just stand in authority on the stage. People feel your presence. They feel that you are commanding the room. And so don't go into a presentation timid. Even if you are scared, pretend you are not, because everyone who's looking at you needs to see that you are confident. Otherwise, they won't believe a single word that you say. So when you're standing in presentation, again, be wary of your stance. Consider standing shoulder width apart, roll your shoulders back, and try not to have your arms crossed. Normally, I'll have my fingers crossed like this, or I just have my hands open, because again, I want to invite the audience in. When you're presenting, present with the 3 E's: energy, enthusiasm, and excitement. Regardless of what the subject matter is, show them that you are excited to be there and that you are happy to be able to share this information with them. And they will feel that energy and they will take it and make it their own. In terms of your movements, don't do anything that's fake. Gesture naturally. This means using your hands with purpose and intention. So I'm not going to do this the whole time, because this is really distracting and it's really annoying. But if there is a point where I want to say, I want you to look into the future, I'm going to do that intentionally. Or we look into the past, I'm going to turn my head intentionally, because I want my words to relate to my body. And then lastly, connect. Look at your audience. And I don't mean give them the death stare, right? What you need to do is, we can use the Z. So you start at the back of the room and you scan across, you come down to the front, and then you scan across. And that makes everybody feel seen. And it allows you to have eye contact with a number of people and again, improve that connection. Also think about other things that you can stop doing is fidgeting, rolling side to side. That's really distracting. Doing things with your hands, really distracting. Also saying, I once heard a presentation. I actually don't remember what the presentation was about, because the speaker said so often I was completely zoned out to everything else that they were saying. Don't let that be you. If you know that you say a lot, pause. We generally tend to say as a filler word because we don't know what to say next. Your audience don't know what you're going to say next. So pause. trying to think of something to say. Instead of saying, I'll say the last thing I said and then pause, gather my thoughts, and then I move on to the next thing. So when you are practicing, you can use a script. And again, this helps you to say things in a very specific way. And you can start by jotting down some ideas in a doc or on a piece of paper and then build out how you'd like to say it. Decide on the tone that you're going to use and the best flow for that presentation. And you can add that script to the speaker notes of your presentation to help you remember some of the key points. And if you're writing a script for yourself verbatim, you could consider using AI to help you. So what you could do is bullet point the key things that you want to say and allow yourself to be in the midst of it. This generally takes a skill and practice to do, so I wouldn't advise doing that straight away. But once you're really familiar with your own content, then it's worthwhile doing. But if you'd rather have a script where everything you need to say is written down, then you could consider using a transcription service to transcribe a practice version that you've recorded or delivered, and then use that as a basis to edit. You can also be using Bard, or ChatGPT to get started with some of your slide notes. Do remember that this isn't a replacement. So what you're looking for is something to help you get started with a view that you'll edit it and make it your own. When you go to deliver a presentation, the audience need to see you. They don't want to see the fact that you're reading something, that you are using words that obviously look and feel different. So yeah, it's worthwhile making sure that you're comfortable enough with it that you can deliver your best self as you present. So lastly, I'd say keep practicing. Set aside some time over the next few days to record yourself presenting anything. Prop up your smartphone, just hit record and see what it comes out. Watch it, and look at yourself. It's really important to see how you come across, and then it will give you an idea about some things to share. Okay, so let's have a look to see if there are any questions. So there's one, any tips for online presentations? We use MS Teams for almost all of our meetings, and when you present in there, you can hardly use your body language, which we used in good old days. I know Raj, I think, has dropped off, but I beg to differ here. Even though I am sat in a room delivering virtually, my body language is very much a part of my presentation. Everything that I do in terms of delivery is the same as if I was offline. Sometimes I need to be more exaggerated when I'm online because people can't see the minute changes in your body language or your positioning. So sometimes I'm more, I accentuate certain things. My facial expressions are a bit more overt. So if you are thinking about doing virtual expressions, practice in the mirror, look at your practice on the platform, whether it's Google Meet or something else, and see how bringing your body to life, your energy, your enthusiasm, your gestures, your facial expressions, your tone can really transform a presentation. So I think that's a really good question to be asked. And again, for any online presentations, just keep bringing yourself and make sure you're present, you're engaged, you're smiling, you're emotive, you're using your body and you're moving through. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to wrap up here as we are now come to time. It's very, very useful for us to hear your feedback about how you found today's presentation. So do let us know, and also let us know what's one thing you're going to do or take away from today in order to improve your presentations. Please do scan the QR code or use the link to give us some feedback. And remember that we also have a variety of other presentations or webinars available for you to tap into if there's any other areas you would like some support in. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you again soon.